Hi and welcome back to my channel. It is your girl Felicia here with another video. So like I told you guys, I want to start doing little like conversational videos once a week. They will be uploaded on Wednesdays. And this week what I want to talk about is the movie Harriet. It came out this weekend. I went to go see it because one, I'm very intrigued by the character. Not the character. I'm very intrigued by Harriet Tubman. Um, we all learned about in history. She's like one of the first people they mention when it comes to Black history. But I learned more about her through the TV show Underground. Do you guys remember that? I'm so mad. I am so mad that they canceled that show. That was my show. But I became more intrigued about Harriet Tubman when she was portrayed on the TV show Underground. And the reason was because they kind of gave you more insight into who she was and who she was as a woman, which made me do some research about her. So when the movie came out, I was like, I'm going to see it. I'm definitely going to see this. Ain't no stopping me. And I went to go see it. And after I saw it, I was like, okay. So I'm going to try to give my thoughts on this without giving any spoilers. But I don't really see how you can spoil this if you know who Harriet Tubman is, what she did, and why she is a prominent person when it comes to Black history. So let me pull up my notes because I do have notes because I didn't want to ramble. I do want these conversations to kind of be structured. So let's get into it. So first, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. And that was the controversy about the person who played Harriet, Cynthia Erivo. So it was some controversy around the fact that some years ago, maybe 6 years ago, that's what I read. Maybe about 6 years ago, she put some tweets, and she's had comments about American-born Black people, ghetto culture, and things of that nature. For those who don't know, Cynthia Erivo is Nigerian. However, she was raised. She's British. She was raised overseas. She's British. And for those so people had some issues about that. They don't want to support the movie, or they didn't support the movie because of her, and they felt like they had an issue with the things that she said about, like I said, American-born Blacks and, ghetto culture. So when I heard about that, I was like, one, why are we digging up tweets and comments or whatever from 6 years ago? Like, I just don't know how I feel about digging up stuff on people, especially when they get into a prominent position. They did the same thing with Kevin Hart when it was announced that he was going to host the Emmys. So was it the Emmys? I don't watch those major award shows. One of those award shows. And I don't know. I just have an issue with that. But on the flip side of that, what she did is nothing new when it comes to African-born Black people and American-born Black people. It's this thing between us. It's always been there. I can remember things that Black Americans have said about African-born Black people. Like, there's always been a thing of who's better, yada, yada, yada. It stems from ignorance to a degree. And so, yeah, it's always been a thing. So the fact that she's a part of it, granted, it can be disappointing. It is a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, it's nothing new. I just don't, not to say that that makes it right or acceptable, but to dig it up and to make a big thing about it, and some of these people that's having a big fuss about it may, particularly American born black people, I can guarantee you they've made some type of criticism, they've made some type of remark, they've teased African born black people. It is what it is. It's not right, but we've done it, and it's always been a thing. So to make that like an issue of, oh, I'm not going to see, when we know that this is something that goes on in black culture, to me it was kind of like, that's nothing new. It's nothing new. So that didn't stop me from going to see it. Another thing was, people had an issue with the fact that Cynthia Erivo is not a American born black person, and she's playing this role as Harriet Tubman, who was an American slave. And it's been a thing because she is not the first person who is not American, or who is not who's not a slave descendant to a degree. Because, just real quick, we have to remember that during slavery, slaves were sent and shipped all over the world. It wasn't just to America. However, America is the most known, and we're still kind of struggling with it. But it wasn't, Africans wasn't just shipped to America for slavery. They were sent to other parts of the world as well. With that being said, though, when it comes to playing movies based on prominent African American figures who were slaves, or when it comes to doing movies that's based on slavery, people tend to have an issue, or it's becoming an issue now, when it is not someone who is African descent playing these roles. Would it be nice to have people of African descent playing these roles? Absolutely. But I also feel like we can't argue about black people, more particularly black women, not being shown and having roles in movies, but then when they do, we want to start getting into nuances of, well, is they American born? They're not descended from slave. Like, I think all that, like, that just, it to me, that part was a tad bit silly. Do I have my preference of who I would have loved to see as Harriet? Yes. It is Aisha Hines. She played Harriet in Underground. She did a beautiful job. She did an awesome job, and I'm a huge fan of her. So if she could have did it, I would have loved it. But Cynthia Erivo did an awesome job. I'm not going to knock her. So another controversial thing was, I'm a backtrack. So those was the two things. So at the end of the day, me personally, I didn't have an issue with Cynthia Erivo playing this role. Yes, I would have loved Aisha Hines playing it, but I was okay with her. She did a great job. Now, let's talk about the movie. All in all, I think that overall, the movie was good. I did enjoy it. My one qualm with the movie is I would have liked more. They focused more on her helping slaves escape, and just going through her journey of escaping, and then going back and helping her family escape. She helped her mom and dad escape, understanding her story of why she escaped, for those who don't know, and just giving you a little bit of her outside of the textbooks. I did like that part. However, what I was disappointed about was Harriet Tubman did so much in her life outside of just helping slaves escape slavery. She did a whole lot more than that. She was a spy during the Civil War. She had a home that cared for seniors. She was a part of the women's suffrage movement. I would have liked to seen that in the movie. They did tell you that toward the end, but I would have liked to see more of that in the movie, and I was kind of disappointed that they didn't put that in the movie. However, it's one of those things where it's almost like when you read a book and then you see the movie. Like it was, for me, it felt like that. Like I already knew about Harriet Tubman. Like I said, I've been intrigued by her for some time, so I've done my research and I already knew about her. So that part was my disappointment. Another thing was that irritated me is I really wish that when we do these movies, and we're doing movies about these prominent people, especially when it comes to historical figures such as Harriet Tubman or whoever else, I really wish that we would stop tampering with their legacy for the fact of entertainment. If you're going to tell a story and keep it as accurate. Keep it accurate. Don't change nothing. Don't switch nothing around. Don't take things out. Don't rearrange things for the fact of telling a story. And there was a few things in the movie that did not happen in Harriet Tubman's life. And I believe that they put it in there just for the sake of making the story entertaining. Like if you're going to do a story based off a historical person, I don't know. I have an issue with that. Unless you're doing a movie or something and you're using them as a like inspiration. It was inspired, but don't say you're going to do a story about someone and then turn around and tweak things for the sake of entertainment. Like I said, it was a couple of things that was done in the movie that did that, and I was just like, this wasn't even necessary. We didn't need this. You could have kept the story as it was, and it still would have been an amazing story. And that is what I'm getting to is in the movie, once Harriet Tubman escaped, and she started to go back to get more slaves, her slave master started to work with a tracker, or another access would be a bounty hunter, who just happened to be a black man. I'm not sure how, well, I don't think, I never read anything about that whenever I would look up stuff about Harriet Tubman. I never saw anything about her, about there being a bounty hunter or a black bounty hunter or a black tracker that was helping to find her. I also don't believe, I just don't think that it was necessary in the story. And so that was like one of my main issues, aside from little small things that actually happened to her life that kind of got tweaked or was told out of the story. And speaking of this bounty hunter and the black tracker, there was controversy about that as well. Some people believe that adding that to the story added to the divide that black men and black women already are dealing with today. And the last thing that we needed to see was a black man going after Harriet Tubman. Not only was he trying to capture her to turn her in for money, he also killed Janelle Monáe's character in the movie. Sorry for the spoiler. And so some people felt like that that wasn't necessary. It caused more division when we talk about the relationship and the issues that black men and black women have. I also agree that it was not needed for this story. However, I don't believe that a black bounty hunter or a black tracker, as they were called in that time, or tracker, I don't believe that that is far-fetched. I do believe that that could have happened because, we have to think about the times. If there were free slaves, there were free black people, especially in the area where Harriet Tubman lived. There were free black people living and trying to survive during that time. So it wouldn't have been far-fetched for there to be black trackers or black bounty hunters. And the reason that I say this is because if they captured a slave, you could get up to $300. During that time, for $300, you can buy some land, you can get you a little farm, you can kind of take care of yourself and sustain for quite a while. So if you're trying to survive, I wouldn't see that being something that's far-fetched to do. However, again, in reference to the movie, it was not needed because it wasn't factual. It was also, there was also a thing about, the whole white savior, and people believe that the person who portrayed Harriet's master, well, he wasn't technically her master. He was her master's grandson. And he was the one who was looking to capture Harriet. He didn't want her dead. He just wanted to bring her, he just wanted her back enslaved. Because in essence, he was her property. And there was a scene where it almost could have been taken as the white savior thing, but you also have to remember the times that we're talking about. He was, in his mind, he looked at her as his property, as something that belonged to him, as something of value. And if she would have died, then that would have been a loss. And at the time, his family was already struggling because she had helped some slaves escape. So that was kind of like their property being taken away, and that's income that's being taken away, and they were struggling. So that's how I saw it. In this case of Harriet Tubman, he wasn't being an ally or a savior. He was doing what he was trying to do for his own self-gratification. Let me see what else I have. Okay, so watching this movie, sorry y'all, my foot going to sleep. So watching this movie, and I've seen 1,000 slave movies. I am not one of those ones that be like, another slave movie? I am like, keep them coming. Let us see and understand and learn our history, especially if it's depicted properly. But I've never really sat and thought about, it was a couple of dynamics that I never really sat and thought about until the Harriet movie. The first one was the transition of going from being enslaved to being a escaped slave or a free slave, or gaining your freedom. And I just wonder how was that transition like? There is a scene in the movie that once Harriet, once she escaped and she makes it to Philadelphia, and she's walking and she's kind of hunched over, head down, and she goes up to someone to get some information, and the black man, tell her, walk like you belong here, you're free now. And it just made me think about the transition that so many black people had to deal with going from being enslaved. In some cases, you're enslaved with your family, or at least you are around people that you know, you're loved, you're accustomed to. And like with Harriet case, she escaped by herself. She made it to Philadelphia alone. So here it is now. You're in a strange place. You really don't know anybody. And you're also, I have to believe that there's a part of you that's still paranoid that you won't get captured again. So I just wondered, what was that transition like, going from being enslaved to being freed or escaped, or whatever that case may be. Another thing that I also thought about was the trauma behind that being, the trauma of being enslaved and then now being free. I feel like personally we are still suffering from PTSD of slavery. I can only imagine what someone who was enslaved and let's say 2 or 3 days later, or 2 or 3 weeks or months, because these journeys wasn't quick journeys. These journeys took them days, weeks, months to complete. So I'm just wondering, what was that trauma like, running, being enslaved, and now, being free. I know that there has to be some really deep inside trauma. We all know of the few things, we see it today, a few things that black people deal with that I know comes from the trauma of slavery. But just to see it I'm interested into what did it look like in that shorter time period versus what we're dealing with today. Another thing that was interesting that caught my attention was the dynamic of enslaved black people and free black people. There's a part in the movie where Janelle Monáe plays a free black woman in Philadelphia. She is a business owner. She's beautiful. She's poised. All those great things. And then you have Harriet Tubman, who has been enslaved. She's illiterate. And just dealing with the traumas of being enslaved. And she's also just dealt with running for days, weeks, whatever, to get to Philadelphia. And there's a moment when Janelle tells her that she stinks and she smells like a barn animal. And Harriet says, considering the fact that you are a free black person, you would never know the stench of fear and running for your life. And that made me think about the dynamic between free slaves, or free black people, and enslaved black people. What did that dynamic look like? Was it a thing of, did free black people think they were a bit better? Was it like a class thing? How did enslaved black people feel about free black people? It almost, and we can look at that as almost, we have these classisms and our own isms between the black community, and I'm sure that it probably mirrored that, but I never truly thought about it until I watched the movie Harriet. So that is it. Like I said, overall it was okay. I really needed more from the movie. All the other controversial and chatter outside of it, to me, that's neither here or there. I believe that we need to support our movies. We need to stand behind our movies. We need to put our dollars in movies, and movies such as this, because we complain about how we're being seen on film. Well, here's a movie that shows strength. It shows family. It shows endurance. It showed perseverance, and you got all this other chatter about stuff that doesn't even matter. So, like I said, I enjoyed the movie. There were things that I wish would have been better, but I mean, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't too off, but there were some things that I did not like that was added for the sake of entertainment. So that is it. That's it for this week's little chit chat. If you have topics or anything that you would like for me to discuss, please drop it in the comment section. If you saw the movie Harriet, tell me what you thought about it. Did you like it? Did you not see it because of the whole controversy standing around it? Let me know. And if you are not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification button so that when my videos do post, you will be the first to know. Like, and until then, be blessed.